Last time out, we edged towards the midway point of the season, with the Belgian Grand Prix being next on our list for our drivers, and Spa-Francorchamps certainly lived up to its name and proved to be a tricky track for our title contenders, with Lewis Hamilton crashing out spectacularly of this Grand Prix as Lance Stroll and Esteban Ocon also followed the trend. This inevitably caused a safety car on lap 11 for our drivers, but it wasn't too long until another one had to be brought out, with Max Verstappen cracking under the pressure and Valtteri Bottas finding the track too hot to handle as he retired from the Grand Prix earlier on due to an engine failure. So not a great day for Mercedes, but McLaren take 4 points here, and Sean Shoggy from Shogs GP slithered his way up into that third place position and takes home a podium in his rookie season. So who will find victory next time out at the Dutch Grand Prix? Stay tuned to find out. Yes, welcome back to another F1 2021 My Team Career Mode episode, where today we're joined for episode number 11 for the Dutch Grand Prix. Now, as you just saw, we are now halfway through this season with 10 races to go. Who's going to be crowned champion? Who knows? Just make sure you follow along with this series and make sure you subscribe down below to never miss an episode and to never miss my latest content on this channel. And don't forget, if you do enjoy today's episode, then be sure to hit the like button down below if you want me to keep this series going. Now that's enough recapping and waffling, let's jump straight into this episode. Now currently, as we enter round 11, we're sat second from bottom in the performance table, which isn't great, but as you may have just seen in the R&D progress screen, we've got loads of upgrades on the way, which could actually put us above AlphaTauri as things stand at the moment. And obviously our performances haven't been bad either. We've got a 9th place in Hungary, a 3rd place in Belgium as well, so a podium already, which I just wasn't expecting in my first season, at least anyway. But yeah, clearly this table doesn't really portray how like a good representation of our car compared to all the others on track, as we're still managing to get the performances out of our car, but at the same time I'm finding that I'm held back by limitations of how fast we're able to develop the car. So we're not going to be up there with McLaren, Mercedes every single race weekend. I think that was just a one-off fluke last time out, but what we can be doing is fighting with Aston Martin and AlphaTauri for those points finishes, because we definitely can be getting those 9th, 10th places every single race. It's just a matter of how fast we can develop the car to keep with those guys and keep up with our performances on track. So yeah, we definitely got belief after that podium finish last time out, but whether we can keep that going and keep the momentum going is another question. But a driver who can't manage to find his momentum at the moment and who's just come back into the sport is Fernando Alonso, who's retiring from the F1 driver lineup for next year. So once again, it's going to be a huge loss for F1, and it's going to be a huge loss for my career mode, as he was a driver that I was really looking forward to partnering up with in one of the future seasons, but we can't do that now because he's retiring, and in F1 2021 you can't actually approach a driver who's retiring. So it's going to be a huge loss to my career mode, but also it means that an F2 driver will come through next season, and it's going to be excited to see who might take his place. And it might also mean like a butterfly effect for some of the other teams in this career mode savers. I don't think Alpine will necessarily go for an F2 driver. They might actually go for someone who's already established driver who has a better racing background, so they might try and pinch him from, let's say, like an Alfa Romeo team or a Haas team, and they might actually go ahead and get an F2 driver instead. But back on board with ourselves now, and our first 2 laps of qualifying have been below average, to say the least. We've clawed our way up into P18 somehow, but we just can't seem to get to grips with this track. It's such a tricky circuit to try and learn and master, and especially in my car, my team car is built for power. Like, we've seen the facilities that we've invested into. We invested into power mostly and some aerodynamics, but this track is specifically built for like aerodynamics and having like a nimble car. Like, the most nimble, aerodynamic and like streamlined cars do so much better on this track. That's why we saw the Red Bull of Max Verstappen win here in real life. I mean, the Red Bull was focused all their time and energy mainly into aerodynamics, and that's paid off massively for them, and I don't think it's going to pay off for us here today as we go on to our 4th lap with a scrub set of tyres, as we can see, and there's only 48 seconds remaining on the clock, and we go wide at turn 7, and that could be costly for us today at the Dutch Grand Prix. We're still in P15 though, so there is still some hope that we can get through, but it's not looking likely if another car can beat our time, as there's still 30 seconds remaining on the clock, and it goes down to the wire. And as you can see, Kimi Räikkönen gets ahead of us into P14. We drop down to P17. And that's where we're going to be starting in Sunday's race, unfortunately. Felipe Drugovich starting in P19, so not a great qualifying session for him either, especially after a promising showing out at Spa, but we've got it all to make up in the race.
For years, the passionate Dutch fans have been easy to find trackside at races across Europe and throughout the world. Now, at long last, they have a Grand Prix to call their own. It's a warm welcome once again to all of our viewers in the Netherlands and around the globe as we get underway for the Dutch Grand Prix. A lap of this short 2.6 mile Zanvoort circuit features 14 corners, 10 to the right and 4 to the left. The main straight is 678 metres long and heads into turn 1, the Tarzan corner. DRS down the main straight into the braking zone. That could be the best overtaking opportunity on the track. A warm welcome to Anthony Davidson, who's beside me in the commentary box today. Can we begin by having a chat about Sergio Perez? There's a new gearbox in the back of that car, which means a grid penalty, and hopefully some excitement as they make their way through the field.
Well, at the end of the day, it's always better to take some pain now than parking it up halfway through the Grand Prix. Let's just hope they can put that new gearbox to good use and get the results they're looking for.
It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position, and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Leclerc, Lando Norris and Sainz, Ricciardo, Gasly, Tsunoda and Sergio Perez, Vettel, Stroll, Fernando Alonso and Raikkonen, Ocon, Giovinazzi, Shah and George Russell, Drugovich, Latifi, Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. And now it's time to head down to the track.
So it's an all Mercedes front line here today at the Dutch Grand Prix, and we are starting, it's still in P17, so no position changes today, but we're still going to try and make up the difference in today's race. So to do that, we're going to need to go aggressive, and we're going to try and do a two-stop round this circuit. As we know, the tyre wear is high. It's from especially from last year's game. I know that tyre wear, we definitely struggled with it, and the tyre temperatures just got too hot on the soft tyres and the medium tyres. So I think doing a two-stop where we're not on those tyres for too long might be the way to go. We've gone for the soft tyres right at the end, but whether we can make these soft tyres last and stretch the distance is another question. So they may end up turning into some medium tyres instead. We'll have to see in today's race. So to 5 red lights we go for the Dutch Grand Prix. The fans are cheering on Max Verstappen's name in today's race as the lights go out and away we go. It's a good start initially for myself, but we get a bunch of wheel spin that holds us up down the main straight against Giovinazzi. The Italian dives down the inside of myself and Kimi Räikkönen, somehow managing to keep it out of the Flying Finns car as we graze and bump the back end of Giovinazzi, desperately trying to find the space to make the move on both the cars ahead of me, and we managed to do that round the outside on the banked corner of turn 3. What a move that moves us ahead of Esteban Ocon and Giovinazzi there as we move up into P14, slithering and sliding our way like a roller coaster around this Dutch Grand Prix, but we go wide at turn 7 and allows Ocon to come straight back up the inside, and we just made that way too easy for the Frenchman there. I mean, it looks easy on camera, but realistically that corner is a nightmare to find the grip and find, as you're going such a high speed around turn 7. You end up putting all your faith in your car at that moment in time, and as you saw in qualifying, it ended horrendously for us. But this time we got the grip and we find our way and sneak our way back down the inside of Ocon. The Frenchman had no idea we were coming there. We find our way back up into P14, so we lost that position for a brief moment in this lap, but now we try and settle down and keep this position to ourselves. So we've moved up from P17 up into P14, and just how far can we go in this race? But first of all, let's take another look at that move Giovinazzi made on both Ocon and Kimi Räikkönen there. It's a suicidal move. I don't know how we managed to slow the car down in time and just have that much room on the track. It seemed like I was running out of room and I wasn't even that close to the barrier, and yet Gio's here making these cataclysmic moves for his team that could end his whole team's race. So the Alfa Romeo driver is a lucky one there. We're back on board with us, and we had a half chance against Stroll just then, but we just got too much on the curb and didn't find the traction on the track, whereas Stroll, he had all the asphalt in the world to keep his position, as Ocon has a half chance on us just then. It was getting a bit too close for comfort just then, as the Frenchman tried to capitalise on our little error through turn 7. We just tried so hard to keep the car on the track itself, but now we move forward to the end of lap number 2, and we're right on the tail of Stroll, getting as much slipstream as we can down the main straight, going round the outside at turn 1, trying to use the bank corner to our advantage there, and we just about managed to make that move work. And now we can look on towards his teammate, on towards the back of Sebastian Vettel, the man who spun us round at Austria. And maybe we can try and claim some redemption here today at the Dutch Grand Prix. But right now we look on towards the leaders here today, and Lewis Hamilton leads this race with Max Verstappen, the home favourite, closely behind. So he's still in with a chance, even though the Mercedes have been so dominant this year in this career mode season, and the Red Bulls just haven't really shown any sort of pace so far this year. So maybe we're going to see a resurgence of them later on in the season, but we'll just have to see. For now, the McLarens are actually in that second place with I think Ferrari are actually closer than the Red Bulls are, and I think Max Verstappen is doing a mega job to keep his championship fight going. And if the Red Bulls don't pick up their performance soon, then he's definitely going to be out of the championship fight, and it will be up to the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo to salvage some sort of dignity from this season, because Mercedes are running away with it right now. But someone who isn't running away with it is Sebastian Vettel, who's looking a bit slow off the end of that final corner. We go left, we go right, down the right hand side of Sebastian Vettel. We get the inside line this time, we go to the outside, try and defend against the German as we try and make our car as wide as we can to stop Vettel from gaining that position back from us. And I think for now we have, and we can maintain that position. 2 laps later though, and we are not finding any pace, not gaining any pace on both the Aston Martin cars behind us. They're still there within that 1 second mark, and notably on the hard tyres as well, as Vettel gets way too close to our rear end then. I'm surprised he didn't manage to make any contact with us just then, as he looked so close in that rear view point of view. But going back to what I was just saying, and within these last 2 laps we haven't been able to find any time on the Aston Martin cars behind us. Even with these soft compounded tyres, they're just not doing the job anymore, as the team over at Aston Martin have just played their cards right today, it seems like. And maybe we've just been a little bit too foolish today, as I remember from last year that the Dutch Grand Prix, the soft compounded tyres won't last at all around this circuit, as the tyre deprivation is way too high, and you end up finding that as you go longer on a stint of the soft or medium compounded tyres, you end up reaching those maximum tyre temperatures, and they make you end up oversteering and understeering, so much so that you begin to lose tons of time. Whereas the hard tyres, you know, especially for the player, they end up keeping a cooler temperature throughout the race. And as maybe like the soft tyres will be the better race tyre for the first couple of laps, but as you get into the 4th or 5th lap, you're going to want to be on those hard compounded tyres, because they keep the cool temperatures, and you're not going to be losing time understeering and oversteering, as Vettel tries to make the move on us into the hairpin there, but we just about managed to slow the car down in time to brake for that corner and keep ahead of Sebastian Vettel. But right now it is the time to come in. We want to get off these soft compound of tyres, because like I was just saying, they're awful as we get into the latter region of this stint. So we go into the mediums, and I think we might end up doing a medium tyre after this one instead of the soft, just because of how poor those soft compounded tyres were. So making an early pit stop obviously meant that we're going to go down a few places, and we are now in last place. But as we move on to lap number 12, Mazepin goes into the pits, and we're slowly beginning to catch up with the cars ahead of us. Latifi, Schumacher, Russell, they're all within striking distance, and all we can do now is race to our max, race to our fullest, and try and get the most out of this car. And already I'm noticing a huge difference in pace with these medium tyres. They're doing a much better job than the softs were. I mean, like I said, in the first couple of laps they were doing alright, but the mediums or the hards are definitely the way forward around this racetrack. as Schumacher, the other Haas car, now dives into the pits, and we get the jump onto Latifi into turn 1. That was a nice little cheeky dive bomb on the Canadian driver, and now we can look on towards his teammate George Russell, who is ahead, and crucially we're ahead of Esteban Ocon. Now obviously we were ahead of him by a couple places. I think he was just behind the Aston Martin cars when we dived into the pits, so this means that we haven't lost a huge time on the soft tyres, and maybe the undercut has worked for us here today, but we won't be able to see that until the Aston Martin cars make their pit stop, and it won't be until the latter region of this race, unfortunately, because obviously they're on the hard compounded tyres, they're going to make one stop. But right now we're on the back of George Russell, trying to make a similar move as we did on Latifi, almost pushing him through the penultimate corner, and we've got so much overspeed that we're going to make the move on our teammate as well. Drogovic looked slow around turn 1, and unfortunately he's lost the place to Russell as well, so maybe that was a bit of wrongdoing by us, but we just had the overwhelming pace to get past both the cars. And unfortunately for Drogovic, he couldn't really do much about that. But as we move on to lap 23, we pass a couple of cars who just make their pit stops as we speak. So Raikkonen made his pit stop 3 laps earlier, and now we just about managed to make a move on Lance Stroll. So we managed to get up into P14, and now we can see where we be placed with Vettel and Alonso both pitting. We can see the halo of Vettel as he exits the pit lane, and we just about managed to stay ahead of the German. But remember, we still got another pit stop to make, so now is the time to make the break and the getaway from the Aston Martin driver, because unfortunately for us, these medium tyres won't last us until the end of the race, so we still got to make that extra pit stop work. But as we move on to lap 26, and he's right up our arse, the German driver, and he's making the move on the inside, we see a little red arrow come dangerously close to our side pod, but luckily for us there's no contact made, and we can carry on with the race. But it's nothing to celebrate, unfortunately, as we're still setting red sectors and not gaining any time on the Aston Martin drivers. So we're going to make the pit stop now and try to get onto a fresh set of tyres, so we can start setting these green sectors and try to claw our way back at these two drivers who have been a thorn in my side in today's race. And controversially, we opt for the soft compound tyres, so we're hoping at least the fastest compound tyres will do us a bit more justice, as the weather looks a bit more overcast and doesn't look as bright on the track. So hopefully the tyre temperatures will keep down and maintain a cool temperature to give us an advantage in this last stint. So we come out in P16, and just before we reach the Aston Martin drivers, we've got the Alfa Romeo duo of Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, the guy who made that audacious dive bomb at the start of this race, if you remember. And now they're trying to work as a team, as a unit, to catch up with the Aston Martin duo, but there's still a big gap between them and Lance Stroll, I think it is. So will this lack of clean air slow us down in our attempt to claw away at our positions and at the table of this race? As we make a little long shot at Giovinazzi, we're looking right on the back of him as we enter lap 33 now it is. But yeah, like I was saying, we won't be fighting for any points here today, but what we will be fighting for is our pride and our dignity in the Dutch Grand Prix, in hope that we can build on it for next season. But right now we're looking so quick on the back of Giovinazzi. The Italian's looking a bit slow, he's looking a bit sharpish as we make the dive bomb to the inside, and we managed to make the move up into P15. So can we get Kimi Raikkonen in these last few laps? But look at that, the Finn is on the medium tyres as Felipe Drugovich retires yet again from another Grand Prix, which is heartbreaking to see once again. But will we get up into this P14 as we look on board with us right now, trying to catapult ourselves with the slipstream, with the DRS, away from Kimi Raikkonen, and that moves us up into P14. But I think that's about as much as we'll be able to muster up for today's race, as we wave on Lewis by, the champion who has been dominating this race and has clearly deserved his win today. But for us, it is P14. It's not what we hoped for. We hoped for some points at least in today's race. But I think not only did our strategy let us down, but it was also our ability to master this track. We've struggled with the free-flowing corners of the Dutch Grand Prix, and that really shows that we need to put some time and effort into our aerodynamics and improve that and try and make it better for next time we come back to this circuit for next year. And hopefully we'll have much better championship contending car for next year. So I think our Dutch fans will have to wait for that one when it comes back around. But overall, a very dismal showing today. Not a whole lot of action going on, but I hope you did enjoy today's race either way, because the Dutch Grand Prix is a lovely circuit to race around, and it's just unfortunate that our car can't challenge it yet.
What a magnificent victory here at the Dutch Grand Prix. Anthony, tell me, what was it that helped them achieve this success?
Well, tyre management probably played quite a large role in the outcome of this one. As ever, it's not just about speed, it's all about maintaining that speed consistently over a stint, over a race distance. So being able to keep up the lap times while still being smooth on the controls and gentle on the tyres, that's really where the race was won today.
So after a magnificent race, we can now see the drivers making their way to the podium. Once again, it's the Silver Arrows who take top spot, a well-earned victory for Mercedes.
So Lewis Hamilton wins the Dutch Grand Prix with Bottas and Lando Norris rounding out the podium positions. Max Verstappen sadly didn't get his home Grand Prix podium today, but he'll be looking for that next year when the time comes back around, and hopefully Red Bull will have a stronger car for then when they can hopefully give Mercedes a run for their money. But just to recap, we finished in P14. Some notable mentions: Gasly and Tsunoda both get into the points for that race, and our teammate fails to finish once again, unfortunately for him. So some major durability problems happening on that side of the garage, so hopefully they will be fixed sometime soon. In the leaderboard, and Lewis Hamilton with that win goes 9 points clear at the top of Valtteri Bottas, who's in second place, and Daniel Ricciardo now 80 points behind the two of them. So it's becoming a two-horse race real quickly in this career mode. But thank you guys so much for watching this episode, and if you did enjoy today's episode, be sure to hit that like button down below, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel for weekly F1 content and more My Team Career Mode episodes. So stay tuned for that.